Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiara and I am the owner of Black Teacup. In this week's YouTube tutorial, I'll be showing you guys how I created these matching hot cocoa tumblers. I will go over each step of how I created these. I will also link everything that I used to create them down in the description box below. If you're interested in knowing how I created them, keep watching. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I post a new video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. All right, then without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, y'all, so we're starting out with an 8-ounce tumbler by Hog and a 10-ounce tumbler from Ozark Trail. As always, I sand my tumblers and wipe them down with alcohol, and then I'm going to base paint the 8-ounce tumbler using a flat white spray paint. And for the 10-ounce tumbler, I'm going to paint that one red. So after the cups dry, we're going to bring them in for glittering. And of course, we're going to glitter using the epoxy method. That's where we spread a very thin amount of mixed epoxy all around the cup in a nice thin layer. So for the white glitter, we're using Sparkle by Last Stop Wilby. And for the red glitter, we're using Red Slippers by Lily's Glitter Shop. Both of those will be linked down below. The glittering process for this should be fairly simple. There's no ombre. You're just going to make sure your cup is fully covered with glitter. Because both of these are kind of a chunky glitter, I do take extra parchment paper and press down any pieces that I see sticking up. That way it's easier to cover with epoxy when we get to that step. And then we're going to do the same exact thing with the red. Just fully coat your cup with glitter, the glitter of your choice. And here's another way to use parchment paper to smooth down your chunky glitter. You can just use that same or a clean sheet of parchment paper and just roll your cup around it. It'll help flatten everything out for you so that when you apply your first layer of epoxy, you won't need as many layers and you won't have to do as much sanding. So I let my cup sit overnight to dry, let that glitter dry. And this is the next day. We're going to go ahead and cover them with epoxy. I did not seal these cups because it's one colored glitter. So there's no need to seal the glitter in place. However, I am mixing my epoxy, like dividing it into two separate cups. That way I don't cross-contaminate the glitter since the glitter is still loose. So I'm using one cup for the red and one cup for the white. And you're just going to spread your epoxy all the way around until the entire cup is shiny. You shouldn't see any rough spots of glitter. That's kind of how you can gauge and see how much epoxy you need. But yeah, just rub it around, get nice even coverage, and don't forget the bottom. Then you'll want to go in with your torch to pop any bubbles. So for the 10-ounce cup, I probably used about 20 ml of epoxy, and for the 8-ounce, I probably used maybe 15, and that's just a rough guesstimate. After you have a good layer of epoxy, you can go ahead and proceed to sanding. So after that first coat, if you need a second coat, you can go right back in within 6 hours and put a second coat. But here I am going to go ahead and sand my tumblers as I always do. I'm going to sand around the rim of the tumbler, and that'll just allow for a smoother finish in the end around the mouth of the cup. And I am using my Rotary sander. This is just my tool of choice for sanding. Once I'm done going around the mouth of the cup, I'm going to use my sanding block to sand the rest of the cup before we apply our decals. And I'm going to do that to both cups, the white one and the red one. Once I'm done sanding, I'm going to go ahead and wash my cups down and wipe them with alcohol. And next we're going to move on to decals. So I got these decals on Etsy and I printed them out using printable vinyl and used the print and cut feature on my Silhouette Studio. And I'm just going to place these exactly where I want them on the cup. And the good thing about the printable vinyl is you do not have to seal it as you would with a water slide. I don't know when's the last time I used water slide, but I prefer printable vinyl, definitely. So for me, the printable vinyl is just the better option. I can just print and cut and stick it directly on my tumbler. No need to seal, and then just go right in with epoxy. I positioned these stickers down kind of towards the middle of the cup to allow room for the drip. Okay, so now that I have my stickers and decals in place, I'm going to go ahead and seal everything in with a nice layer of epoxy. And I'm doing the same thing with the white cup. We're going to let these cups sit overnight before we move on to making our drips. Alright y'all, so I'm going to be using this She Thick Epoxy Thickening Agent that I bought about a year ago from DIY Epoxy. I will have that linked down below. So in order to use this, you will need your mask because there's very small particles that will float in the air. Although it is non-harmful and non-toxic, I still wear my mask. And in order to use this, you want to go ahead and mix your epoxy first. Fully mix it till it's clear and ready to use. And then you'll slowly start adding this thickening agent. I mixed about 50 ml of epoxy total. So after you have your epoxy mixed, what I did was divide my mixed epoxy into 2 separate cups. And then I started adding the She Thick. I started with a small amount and I'm mixing it in with a wooden stick. And then I'm going to add my additives. So I'm going to have a white drip and I'm going to have a chocolate drip. So I bought these mica powders a while back from Amazon. It was a variety pack. And I'm using pearl white for one of these drips. And I'm also going to use a chocolate brown for the other cup. So I will link those mica powders below. It's just mainly your choice of color. You could also use acrylic paint or alcohol ink to dye your epoxy. I just chose to use mica powder. Mica powders normally have like this nice pearl effect, so I like that. So I'm just going to mix everything in nice and thoroughly, and then I'm going to continue to add my mica powder and a little bit of glitter until I get to the color that I want. So here's where the waiting game begins. I'll leave my epoxy to set and then come back and check on it. If it's still kind of runny, I'll add a little bit more She Thick, another spoonful, as you can see here. Stir that in, leave it for a couple minutes, come back, check on it again, and do the same process until you get to the consistency that you want. And as I'm stirring, I'll scrape the side of my stick on the side of the cup, and you can see exactly how fast your drip is going to fall down the side of your cup. If it's running down the side of the inside of the cup really fast, that means it is not time. You want it a little thicker than that. So I'm going to continue to add more She Thick until it gets really thick. You'll want it like a thick, pasty kind of thick, where it'll still fall with gravity, but you don't want it to like drip and be watery. So my brown chocolate drip is ready. It's really thick, like paste almost. So once it gets kind of pasty, that's when you know it's ready to be applied to the cup. So I'm just going to take my wooden stick, grab some of that epoxy out of the cup, and then scrape it across the rim of the cup. Now, because it's still wet, it is going to fall. Right now it looks kind of clumpy, but gravity will do its job. You could also manipulate your drips with your wooden stick. And you just want to do this going all the way around the cup. Just scrape it around the sides of your cup. And please don't fret if you think it looks too thick. You see how it looks clumpy here and it's not falling? It will fall. Just have patience and trust the process. I'm going to continue to do the same process all the way around my cup until the chocolate drips meet end to end. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with the other cup, the red cup. So here is my epoxy thickener, and I'm scraping it on the side of my cup, and it kind of just flowed all the way down. And that's something that you don't want. If it'll do it on the cup, it's going to do it on your tumbler, and you'll have a big hot mess. So here I'm adding some more She Thick, and I'm going to stir that in, and we'll just play the waiting game. It seemed as though that last scoop of Sheet Thick did the job. As you can see, my consistency is it's pretty thick. It's getting pretty thick. When I scrape it on the side of my cup, it's pretty much staying in place. So that's about the consistency you want. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with our stick and scraping it along the rim of our tumbler. And you'll go all the way around until the drips meet. Okay, so next we're going to add our sprinkles. These are polymer clay sprinkles that I got on Etsy, and I'm just going to sprinkle them on the wet epoxy. I'll use my wooden popsicle stick to move them around to where I want them, but you do want to be careful because you can scrape off some of that epoxy. Some people use tweezers. Just do whatever is comfortable for you. Okay, so this next step is very important in the drying process for your drips. Because it is still wet, it's going to continue to fall. So you want to have it upside down for 5-10 minutes and then come back and flip them the other way for 5 or 10 minutes. So as you can see, I keep switching them. 1 minute, one's upside down, and then the next one is right side up. So that way you'll kind of have a control over where your drips dry. And if that doesn't make sense, just leave me a comment down below. I will help you out if you need help. So once my drips have completely cured and are completely 100% dry, I'm going to go ahead in with my final layer of epoxy. This layer is going to be very thin, and I'm going to go over the drips and the sprinkles and get in between all of those drips. So I'm going to use my gloved finger to work my way in between all of those crevices. And then we're going to go back in with our torch to pop any bubbles. And that should be pretty much it, y'all. Unless you need another layer of epoxy, then that should be it. Here is the final result. I love the way they turned out. You guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions or if you tried to do this yourself. I am happy to help. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like icon and also the bell icon so that you're notified every time we post a new video. And don't forget to join us over on Facebook in our group, Black Teacup Community. We'd love to have you there.